Welcome to the source. The source. Source. Hey, get the source.
Greetings. Coming to you live from in the red. Yesterday, man. Rough Sunday. I do want to give a special shout out to Jared Goff for making sure I ended a terrible day on a positive note. Houston plus 3.5. One interception wasn't enough, not even 2, 3, 4. He made sure I got 5 of those bad boys so I could get my cover. People were like, hey, Kyle, great call on the Jared Goff pick. I can't take credit for that, man. I said he would throw a costly pick. I wasn't projecting 5. I was not expecting 5 of them. So Jared Goff throws a baker's dozen interceptions to make sure I got my cover. They still won the game, but I got my cover there. But still, not a good NFL Sunday. I think I went 3-8 or 3-7, so pretty terrible day overall. Top bets went 1-2, so couldn't even get above 500 in top bets. We put it in the past. We move on to Monday. Not exactly an exciting day. Don't even really like my Monday Night Football pick. I'm rocking with it. If you watch the video I uploaded last night, you can tell when I'm recording that video, I didn't realize that Avila and Jonah Jackson were back for the Rams. They've both been activated off IR and are both playing tonight. That kind of changes things. We'll talk about that in a second. We're doing basketball first. Guys, how was your weekend?
Pretty decent on my end. Had some pretty nice morning calls that kind of showed up yesterday. George Kittle anytime touchdown, not a market I get into a ton. And then also had Jeremy McNichols that I ended up posting, plus 300 for him. Thought there was a chance that Chris Rodriguez wouldn't be backing up. He had been called up 3 times from the practice squad already. They ended up giving him an activation spot. So he's on the 53-man roster, which was a little surprising. But at the time, it was about 90 cents better on FanDuel than anywhere else. So had a couple of good anytime touchdowns to buoy my day.
Chris, how was your weekend?
Not too bad. I took yesterday off a little bit. I was like, you know what? I need a reset. Saturday, 1-2 in the NBA. And I was like, you know what? We just going to take the whole day off. I know it's tons of shit to bet on, but it will be tomorrow and next week. So kind of chilled yesterday. I was like, I need a reset. So hopefully we can get going in the right direction. It was a red week for me last week in the NBA. So I need to get on track for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, Sunday, day of the Sabbath. Good day to take off. Speaking of which, shout out to all the veterans. Today is Veterans Day, so everyone who served in the military, appreciation. Let's talk basketball. Wizards on the road at Houston. Didn't bet this game, but I want to lay here. There's just not one redeeming quality of this Washington Wizards team. In their last 3 games, they've posted we're talking 3 games in a row of straight red across the board, offensively and defensively. Their defensive ratings in their last 3 games, defensive rating is how many points you allow per 100 possessions. All 3 games over 120. The last one was up over 128 against Orlando. This team's playing no defense. They can't score. I'm not even the biggest Kyle Kuzma guy, but clearly they need him out there. He's not playing, or actually I think he's doubtful tonight, which means most likely not playing. I don't see any reason to look at Washington. I don't care if it was plus 17.5. It's got to only be Houston for me here, but Houston hasn't 100% looked right either. So I wasn't jumping at the opportunity to lay this many points, but I do think Houston wins comfortably. So Rockets are pass for me.
I'm obsessed with Bilal Coulibaly, over 20.5 PRA in this spot. You have Carrington, who's questionable. That's kind of a big one lingering there. He's averaging 9.5 points, 5 assists, and 5 boards per game so far in the early going of this year. If you get him sitting, that's going to be extra minutes for him here. And of course, on the other side of this one, the big news for Houston, Fred VanVleet's not playing basketball today. We might get a look at a little bit of Reed Shepherd minutes. We might get some Amin Thompson, but I can tell you one guy who should be able to rebound above them. That is the Frenchman, Bilal Coulibaly, here at 20.5. Again, there's kind of 2 pieces of news that can really work towards this for you. One, his rebound rate should go up here if you have Sarr starting alongside of him as opposed to Jonas Valanciunas, which is what I expect them to do with Alperen Şengün on the other side of this one, just matchup dependent. And the second part of this is having Carrington sit, where that would make everybody's rates look better across the board, who he's just kind of been a stat stuffer from the early going. I know Draymond Green spoke his praises of him after Golden State had played against him. Him and Keyshawn George, both 2 guys that had looked all right so far for Washington, just from a stats-filling perspective. But yeah, Keyshawn George should be good to go here on this back-to-back. But If you get Carrington sitting, looking awesome, I already like it. -106 on Caesars is where I played this at. 20.5 PRA. Fire it up.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm of the mindset of you, Kyle. Like, how can you touch Washington with a 10-foot pole right now? Like, they look that bad. Even the games that they haven't covered anything, but the games that they've been losing, I think only one of them have been by 13 points. And it was right at 13 points. Like, they between them and Portland, I mean, Portland also looks really, really bad right now, Kyle. They look terrible. I watched them, down 20 at halftime yesterday, and I'm like, oh, they're about to put up a fight and at least, win the third quarter. They lose the third quarter by 20 more points and end up losing the game by 40. So it's a tie right now for terrible teams. But yeah, I also I thought the line was like a tad bit disrespectful. Both of these teams on the second leg of a back-to-back, and Houston having to travel from Detroit in a very interesting rock fight type of game there. They were able to squeak out a 2-point win. So I was like, how do unrested teams land such a big number, 13 points or more? In their next game, 91, 80, and 1 against the numbers. So that's about a little over 52, 53%, 9-6 against the numbers since 2018. It is an over spot, which kind of makes sense to me a little bit here. I think Houston just won't want to play too much defense in this spot. Washington will play fast pace. It's 10-4-1 to the over. I think Houston should be able to clear 120 in this spot, even without Fred VanVleet. So I would only play up and over the total, or just isolate it to a Houston team total up and over 119.5.
And someone said in the comments that they think Kuzma's back, and you're right. When I looked last night, he was listed as doubtful. I'm looking now; it looks like he's going to play. So apologies for that. I'm not betting this game regardless, but so maybe Kuzma coming back gives the Wizards some kind of boost. It seems like. If you just look at some of their game logs here, it seems like their problems are a lot deeper than just Kyle Kuzma, but maybe it gives them a morale boost. But as of right now, Rockets are past, not betting this. Let's move on to the next one. I have mixed feelings about this next game. So I only bet one NBA game tonight. It's actually the last one. This is probably the one I was considering betting that I didn't pull the trigger on. So last night I wanted to bet the Kings. And I was talked out of it by actually Helms, of all people, talked me out of betting the Kings. It is a terrible spot for Sacramento, of course. I mean, coming off the game against the Suns, right? Just yesterday, so no days off with a travel. I get all that. The Spurs team is really, really struggling, though. If I was catching like +5.5 here, okay. But the fact that we need the Spurs to win this game makes it really hard for me to get there. So I think the move, what I actually ended up circling, didn't actually bet under 220.5. The problem is we've seen both these teams. I mean, if this was a week ago, I'd be like, hey, these teams are running slow paces. Kings they were speeding it up in the Suns game, and we've seen the Kings come out and run super fast pace in a couple of these games. It's just inconsistent as far as what type of game we can expect from the Kings. And honestly, I really don't like the inconsistency in rebounding for the Kings. We've seen them dominate the glass in a few games, and then in between there, we've seen the Clippers absolutely bully Sacramento on the glass. So there's just so many moving parts in this game. I think coming off the Suns game, Kings will be a little bit slower pace. Spurs happy to play a slower pace defensive game. So I think the under would be my favorite bet. I couldn't get there, though. There's just so many. Right now, I'm having trouble in the NBA, and I don't mean in terms of losing bets. I think I'm about even on the year, just down. I'm not talking about losing bets. I mean, when I'm looking at the slate, I'm just seeing the data points are everywhere with these teams where I'm having trouble getting a feel for any team. Now, partially, I'm sure part of that is because college football is still on, so I'm not able to spend enough time on the NBA. And in 3 more weeks after Thanksgiving, college football slows down, and I'll be able to really get into the NBA and start getting a feel. But as of right now, it feels like I'm throwing darts in the dark. So I didn't end up betting this one under a pass for me.
To be fair, one of the things that happens in NBA, I think even more so than MLB, where you can still find some value this time of the day, numbers get bet into shape really, really quick in the NBA from the night before. I mean, I have an 11.5 plus 11.5 ticket right now today on the Clippers. It's now 6.5, 7. You really want to start digging around with 6.5, 7? It had everything to do with as soon as Chet Holmgren went down, the number was posted, you bet it. Like, you just have to find certain sources of value, and that's usually why I like to record the night before. So that's usually when I'm betting most of my spreads. Somebody's putting in there too, oh, Eric likes these props more than he likes spreads. No, I like betting my spreads really, really early, and it's hard for me to tell you to jump on one side of it here. I do have Sacramento +1 here in this spot. It is at -1. I'm just fine with that here too. It's kind of had a couple of times where it's gone through the number. Malik Monk did go down with an injury, definitely going to hurt some of their depth, but he's such a defensive zero so far this season, sitting below 10th percentile defender in my modeling. And that just creates an opportunity for a guy like Keon Ellis to potentially shore up some extra minutes just defensively and to do some good things against San Antonio. I'm with you. We're modeling has been kind of all over the place as far as data points. We're starting to see the Bulls play. I mean, they're still the fastest team in the NBA, but it's starting to get trimmed down. We're starting to see things start to calibrate and normalize a little bit, but then you get these huge, massive shifts in rotations. I don't know exactly how they're going to fill up Malik Monk's minutes. I'm just kind of doing a 1-for-1 swap with more Keon Ellis, maybe a little bit more Trey Lyles there where they can play some of him at the 5, especially against a team like the Spurs, where you don't have like a pronounced center there in the backup minutes for Zach Collins or anything of that nature. Somebody who has played 4-ish once upon a time, but kind of an undersized center to some extent. I feel pretty good about the Sacramento side here. If this were not on a back-to-back, I would be looking at this even being a stronger play, stronger consideration. But as much as I don't like Sacramento and won't be a team on my card very often this season, just based on some of the early numbers that we've seen for them, I think they're a little bit undervalued in this spot. We're still waiting on a couple of pieces. Jeremy Sohan now out for them here. They do get Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell. They're off the bench. That looks good for San Antonio. But overall, I have this closer to 3.5.
That's the side I wanted to be on also. So I agree with you. Let me ask you something, Lindy. I added this stat category to my model this year, and I haven't put it into place yet because, like I said, I need college football to end before I really build it out. What do you put how much weight do you put into the numbers I like to look at? And